If you look at today's slate for MLB DFS, it seems, at least to me, pretty obvious that Tyler Glasnow would be the top-ranked pitcher for MLB DFS because Trevor Bauer is facing the Astros. And as fun as that will be to watch Bauer against his arch nemesis, it's not a high strikeout matchup and not one we want for DFS. That leaves Glasnow as being like the one super big strikeout guy in a decent matchup for today. The problem is that Glasnow's current form, a little bit shaky as of right now. So the question is that form shaky enough to push us off Glasnow as the top pitcher for tonight, or is he still going to be our number one option? We'll dive deep into Glasnow here today and get you set for Wednesday's slate. Welcome on into the solo shot. That's right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network and numberFire.com. My name is Jim Sonis. I am a senior writer and analyst for numberFire.com. Here to break down Wednesday's MLB DFS main slate. It is a 9-game slate with lock set for 7:05 for this evening. And there is some weather for tonight, mostly due to wind, not rain. The one rain spot is in Washington for the Nationals and the Reds. Doesn't look too bad, though, so I think they should be able to get that game in. So I wouldn't worry too much, but check back on the Nats and the Reds later on. As far as the wind goes, winds are out at Yankee Stadium to left at 12 miles per hour. Bump up hitters for the Blue Jays and the Yankees. That's Alek Manoah's debut. We'll talk about that in things to watch. Winds in Boston out to center at 14 miles per hour. Bump up for the Red Sox and the Braves. Red Sox will be in the stacking section. Same thing in Detroit for the Tigers. They host Cleveland. Winds out to center at 14 miles per hour. So bump up Detroit and Cleveland bats. Both those offenses will be discussed at some point during the podcast today as well. And finally, same thing in New York for the Mets and the Rockies. They're out to center at 13 miles per hour. Both pitchers, pretty big ground ball guys who suppress hard contact. So don't go too crazy, but it does, in theory, benefit the hitters in that game. We'll talk more about this slate today, 4 o'clock p.m. Eastern on the FanDuel YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, and Twitter pages. Make sure you subscribe there, but also check out the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed. No matter where you get your podcasts, we'll have a NASCAR podcast, the Coca-Cola 600 coming up on Friday, UFC via Austin Swaim as well. A lot of good stuff here on the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed, so make sure you are subscribed wherever you get your podcasts, and if you like what you hear or if you win some cash, leave us a rating and review. Hey, soccer fans, this season, FanDuel and Captain Morgan are teaming up to give you a one-of-a-kind soccer contest. Introducing Captain Morgan's Soccer Pick'em, a weekly fantasy contest that's entirely free to play. The contest is simple. All you have to do is make quick predictions for Saturday games this soccer season. You'll earn points for each correct pick and compete for a chance to win up to $3,000 in prizes every single week. Head over to FanDuel, enter the Captain Morgan Soccer Pick'em today. Must be 21 plus to participate. For more details, visit FanDuel.com or download the FanDuel Fantasy app. Eligibility restrictions apply, and don't forget to make your game day more delicious and sub in the captain. Pitching preview for this Wednesday main slate, Trevor Bauer is the highest salaried pitcher. He checks in at 11.5 again, facing the Astros. Tough spot there. Tyler Glasnow is 10.7. Domingo Germán is $9,300. German Marquez, Marcus Stroman, and Drew Smyly are the others at $8,000 or higher. So Glasnow's form is not great. I do still think he's going to be the top pitcher for tonight. So let's talk about it here, talk about all the reasons why I'm still there and the reasons why we might want to have some pause. He's facing the Royals at home, and Glasnow, he's had a tough skid recently. He let up 5 earned runs his last time out. That's the second time he's done that in his past 6 starts. And those happen to be what I would deem to be his 6 most relevant starts, because in that time, his four-seam fastball usage has been down. That doesn't bode well for him going forward. If his most relevant sample includes his 2 worst outings of the year, maybe he wants to reverse that. He is not allowed, or he's allowed multiple runs in all but 1 of those 6 starts. But he's still showing the pillars of upside. That may sound like a very stupid term, probably because it is, but whatever, we'll call it that. The pillars of upside, the building blocks you need for a big day, they're still there for Glasnow, and this offense might be a good one for him to face. The Royals have just a 91 WRC plus against righties. That's largely due to their batted ball numbers. They have just a 29% hard hit rate against righties. They have some individual guys who can make hard contact, but a lot of them are righties, and the lineup as a whole is not super powerful. That helps with one of Glasnow's big weaknesses. The hard contact has been a major issue. The other has been walks. He has a 9% walk rate in this time. The Royals are not a low walk team. They're at 9% as well. So he could maybe get in trouble there, letting up too many base runners via the walk. There just aren't as many guys on this slate who can touch his upside. There are concerns with the potential for Glasnow to let up base runners and let up runs, but I don't know if that's enough to overcome the upside gap between him and the rest of the field. Even in this really difficult stretch for Glasnow, he still has a 34% strikeout rate. He's had double-digit strikeouts in 4 out of his 6 starts. He had 8 in one of the others. He got just 2 last time out. So that could be a red flag because it is his most recent start, but that was against the Blue Jays. Very, very tough lineup, and his velocity was fine there. That's the one thing you could look at, is he hurt, something like that? I don't think he is, based on the velocity there. So if I'm looking at range of outcomes for tonight, I think Glasnow is the one guy here I could see hitting 60 points, and that's what I'm looking for at pitcher. So I think we have to rank Glasnow first, even with the recent downtick, and I think it's by a pretty decent amount. So I understand if you don't want to go there. The current form is concerning, to say the least, but because he has those building blocks for upside, I still want to go to Tyler Glasnow for tonight at $10,700. Again, understandable if you don't. So let's go through some alternatives here to Glasnow in case you have trepidations about that current form. One of them is German Marquez. He has a couple of advantages for today. The first one is he's not a Coors Field. That is the best advantage a Rockies pitcher could possibly have. And the second is that he's facing a Mets offense that is effectively at this point stripped down to the studs. So I think you combine those things, and it makes Marquez a viable play for DFS here. The Mets offense just in a bad spot. They're down to an 84 WRC plus against righties. They're not a high strikeout team, which is not ideal for Marquez, but they're not one that puts any fear in you. That means that most good pitchers at this point can be in play for DFS against him, and Marquez is that. He's been trending up recently. He got off to a rough start this year from a walk perspective. I think he had like 6 walks in his first start. But over the past 7, we've seen Marquez leaning more on his slider, and it's a really good pitch for him. If you look at the numbers over at Baseball Savant, Marquez has a 45% whiff rate on that slider. The xWOBA against it is 193. He gets tons of weak contact, so when you see the slider usage increasing, it shouldn't be a surprise then that he has allowed just a 2% barrel rate over this 7-start sample. 2%. Disgusting. And it's a 7-start sample. Batted ball numbers can stabilize in that time. Marquez has been disgusting. The walks are still there. He's walked 3 guys in 3 straight starts. He's walked multiple guys in every start so far this year. So that's why he's not going to be the number 1 guy for tonight. That's why Glasnow to me is still number 1. Glasnow has walk issues too, but not quite this bad. The good thing with Marquez, and the reason we can still feel okay about him, is that he's still getting strikeouts. He has 8 strikeouts in 2 straight games. He had 8 at the beginning of the stretch too. The low barrel rate makes him a bit safer as well, and he can get a ceiling via the strikeouts. I think there's enough here to feel really good about Marquez. I'm going to put him second on this list at $8,800. I just think that there's enough there to feel good about him, given the state of the Mets offense, given how well he's pitching recently outside of the walks. I think there's enough where Marquez can be our number 2 pitcher at $8,800. The third pitcher for me is a true value play. Marquez kind of like a borderline value play. The third one is a true value play, and that's Mike Minor facing Glasnow. So, the win odds may not be all that great, but we want upside. We want a path to the ceiling. And if you throw 7 shutout innings, you're putting yourself in position at least for a win. We were on Minor last week, and he let up 4 earned runs, but he also had 8 strikeouts over 6 innings. So maybe not the best recommendation, but it's still one I feel good about because the strikeouts were there. He lasted 6 innings. We can feel good about that. He has another high strikeout matchup here against the Rays, again, facing Glasnow, but the strikeout rate for the Rays has come down a bit of late, but it's still 30%. And that's a big bump up to opposing pitchers. Minor's outing last week came against Detroit. They are terrible against lefties and a massive strikeout rate, higher than the Rays. So we don't want to overreact to that one start. But it's not a one-start thing for Minor. The 2 starts before that for him were both against the White Sox, who are arguably the best team in baseball against lefties, and Minor had 7 strikeouts in both of those games. If we look at the 4 starts for Minor with his changeup usage being back up, he has a 3.83 skill interactive ERA with a 26% strikeout rate and a 6.5% barrel rate against. The low barrel rate is key because the Rays do put the ball in the air a lot. They're not great against lefties, but they do put the ball in the air. They're a lefty-heavy team, so I'm much more willing to use a pitcher against them when it's a lefty, much less lethal there. 96 WRC plus. Minor is $7,200, which means if you plug him in, you can do pretty much whatever you want with your hitters. I think it's a justifiable play on this slate. I think that Mike Minor is someone I am willing to use for tonight, willing to include in my player pool. I would rank him behind Glasnow and Marquez, but I still feel okay about Minor as being a palatable third-ranked option for tonight. So let's talk about the stacks here. And the stacks, I think, we have some flexibility with. Glasnow, not super oversalaried at 10-7. We do have Marquez and Minor as being mid-range / value guys. So we can afford to talk about some higher salary teams. We'll talk about a value team as our third stack as well to make Glasnow, I should say, a tiny bit easier. My first stack is one I've had a lot of fun stacking this year. It's been the Reds. They have a lot of power, and it's reassuring to stack a team when you don't have to worry if they'll make hard contact. The Reds provide that mental relief, and they put it in a plus matchup tonight with Joe Ross. So I do think the Reds deserve to be number one in our stacking discussion. We talked about this all year where I'm pulling for Joe Ross. I want him to be good. I want guys who have gone through injuries like Ross has to pull it together and succeed. I just haven't seen enough from Ross yet to think it's going to happen right now. In 8 starts for Joe Ross this year, he has a 21% strikeout rate with a 10% walk rate, letting up a lot of base runners. He's allowed an 11% barrel rate, which means the base runners he allows can turn into multi-run innings really fast. We've seen that translate into some big outings against Ross. He let up 10 runs against the Cardinals back on April 19th. The Diamondbacks scored 8 runs against him 2 starts ago. He has had plenty of good starts against good offenses mixed in there too. So it's not to say the Reds are a surefire high floor stack. I think they're just a high upside one. And that's what I care about. And that's why I'm going to be high on them here. I think that the Reds have the dinger potential to go nuts, and I want to react appropriately and go at them for tonight. With Ross, we're good to target both lefties and righties. Lefties have a higher strikeout rate against him, but they make more hard contact. So if I had to choose between the two, I'm probably skewing towards the lefties. So if we're talking about prioritization here, Jesse Winker, Tyler Naquin, probably going to be pretty high on that list. The righties work too. So I'm not writing off the righties here, but I do think that Winker and Naquin deserve a bump up due to the amount of hard contact Ross allows to lefties. Moving on to our second stack here, another one that is, it has some higher salary guys, but I think we can get there with Glasnow for tonight despite that. That's the Red Sox. They're facing Drew Smyly, and Smyly finally got strikeouts last week. We've been waiting for that all year because I thought that Smyly would be sick this year. The Braves, really good last year, the Giants. The only problem is that the, final glimmer of hope for Smyly came against the Pirates. He's now facing the Red Sox, which is a slightly different matchup for Smyly. And I want the Red Sox for stacking against him here. Smyly did make changes in that start. He completely ditched his cutter. The only problem is I don't know if that's a great thing. Like, if we're looking at just this year, it probably was a good thing because it's been a terrible pitch for him this year. I don't blame him for cutting the cord on this thing. But the reason Smyly was so good last year is because the cutter was so good for him. It was the reason for the ascendance for him. So although it's been a bad pitch for him this year, ditching that cutter to me says Smiley's probably not going to turn things around and get back to his 2020 form. And I think that makes me feel better about stacking against him. If Smyly does deviate from what he has done so far this year, I wouldn't expect it to be 2020. I'd expect more like 2019 Smyly. And he got rocked there. He let up tons of hard contact. The hard contact was there last year too, but he got enough strikeouts to cover it up. And I wouldn't think he'll do that again this year until he gives me more reason against tougher matchups to think he will do it or over a larger sample. So that says to me, I need to stack the Red Sox for tonight against Drew Smyly. And stacking the Red Sox against lefty means we finally get Enrique Hernandez against a lefty. I've used him against righties this year. Honestly, like, his numbers have been good against righties, so I've been fine with it. But like, we used to always talk about Kike when he was facing lefties. Now we get him against the lefty, so load him in there at $3,000. I also think it's important to note that Bobby Dahlbeck's strikeout rate goes down a bunch against lefties. It's 29% against lefties, 38% against righties. More balls in play for Dahlbeck is always a good thing. So I am much more willing to use him when he has the platoon advantage. He is, I think, $2,300 for tonight. So Dahlbeck, I think, makes a lot of sense. High upside, low salary. I can dig that for sure, making it easier to get to the higher profile righties on this Red Sox team. Now, if you want to get to guys like Winker, Castellanos, Martinez, all those guys, you got to find some value if you're going with Glasnow. So let's talk about some value here with our third stack, and I think the Tigers can fit that well in their match with Tristan McKenzie. McKenzie was optioned to AAA over the weekend. Now he's coming back up, and I'm assuming it's because of the Zach Plesac shirt ripping off incident, whatever that may be. They've already said that McKenzie will go back down after this game. So that's a really fun confidence booster for him, I'm sure. We're sending you down, bringing you back up, sending you back down. I'm sure he's pleased about this. The reason that McKenzie was sent down in the first place was because he's walked a lot of guys. He has a 21% walk rate this year, which does mean fewer balls in play. And he is a high strikeout guy too. So he's not letting up a lot of balls in play. But as we discussed last week, when we stacked against him on Friday, he's also letting up an 18.6% barrel rate. So the balls in play he does allow are often highly impactful. And if there are runners on base, again, like we discussed earlier on, it's likely leading to a crooked number. Detroit, not as bad against righties as they are against lefties. They have a 90 WRC plus, so they're still not good, but they're not as bad as they are against lefties. So McKenzie, it's possible he's motivated by the one-start audition, but the data says, if we ignore the narratives and just look at the data, it says we can stack against him here. So I'm going to do that with the Tigers and see what happens. One guy I'm interested in buying low on the Tigers is Nomar Mazara. He is minimum salary. He has not hit for power so far this year, so doesn't fit the traditional hitting profile we want for DFS, but Mazara does have a 12.1% barrel rate. That's a good chunk above average. Hitting the ball on the ground too much, but he's striking it decently hard. So I think it's worthwhile to give Mazara a crack here and see what happens. I also love Robbie Grossman, weirdly, for the stolen base upside. Like, he's got like 6 steals this year. So like we should count it as being a source of upside for Grossman. So it may not be what we would expect, but hey, we'll take it for sure. So Grossman, Mazara, and the Tigers, good options for today if you need some salary savers to make it easier to get to Glasnow with a high salaried second stack. Let's finish up here things to watch. I do want to mention that I'm not super into the Giants here. And the reason I'm mentioning that is because I've been stacking against Merrill Kelly all year long. But Kelly looked really good in his most recent start. He had 12 strikeouts against the Dodgers. And I know it's not the Dodgers because they're missing so many guys, but like it's still a really good outing. He didn't throw his four-seam fastball very much, and it worked out really well. So I would expect Kelly to stick with that, and I'd expect his strikeout rate to be up the rest of the way from where it was at the beginning of the year. That lowers the appeal in stacking against him, so I am okay being out on the Giants for this one, despite the fact they are in a very good park for offense. Kelly, I think, is on the ascent, so we'll pedal back from where we were on him previously. From a literal things to watch perspective, I am excited to see what Alek Manoah does against the Yankees. He's been disgusting in AAA. He has a 41% strikeout rate and a 17.5% swinging strike rate across 3 starts, and he's gotten great results too. It's not like this came out of nowhere either. Like, he did this back in low A in 2019 as well. So you look at the implied totals on this slate, the Yankees have a super high implied total. I am okay avoiding them despite that because I think Manoah's going to be good. So, or at least fun. I don't know. I think he'll be good too. But I think I'm okay passing up on the Yankees for tonight despite their high implied total. Manoah should be fun. If you want some more hitters to use, I check out Cleveland against Jose Urena. Urena had a monster ground ball rate to open the year, but he's been shifting more toward his sinker and slider as the year has gone along, and it seems like teams are figuring him out slowly because the ground ball rate is declining. He's allowing a ball in play 82% of the time over his past 4 starts. He's allowed a 10.8% barrel rate. So teams starting to get back to Urena finally. We do want to focus on the lefties here, but that's kind of the guys you go to in Cleveland anyway. So if you're looking for a number 4 stack here, I would say Cleveland checks in behind Detroit, Boston, and I forgot the first stack, the Reds, for today. That is all that we have here for the solo shot for today. But as mentioned, we'll be back with you today, 4 p.m. Eastern on the FanDuel YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, and Twitter pages. Make sure you subscribe there for our Q&A. And also make sure you subscribe to the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed. Our PGA podcast for this week went up yesterday. Brandon's on vacation, so I ran solo for that one. So if you don't want to listen because of that, I get it. Don't blame you. But it is up there on the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed for the Charles Schwab Challenge. Check it out there and make sure you are subscribed on your platform of choice. If you have questions for me, I am on Twitter at JimSannes, JimSannes. You can also follow the FanDuel Podcast Network at FanDuel Podcast. Big thank you to Calvin Theobald, their video producer, for setting up the video broadcast for today. Thank you, Cal, as always. And thank you to everyone for tuning in. Good luck to you with your MLB DFS lineups for tonight. And we'll talk to you once again tomorrow. This has been the solo shot right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network.